Well, good morning. So nice to see happy sunny faces on a cold winter morning in Delhi. Thank you so much for having me. Rakesh Khatri ji, Sagar, ma'am, this school. So I'll just say a little bit about myself, though I think it was already been said. I'm a Delhi wali. I was born and brought up here in Pandara Road. I stayed all my life till I went to Mumbai. I studied in Martyr School and then Jesus and Mary College, Miranda House. Then I went to the National School of Drama. So all this can be Googled. Many of us can be Googled. But can we Google other things? Like we can Google net worth of people, we can Google awards, rewards. But can we Google sorrows of people, their fights, their issues? We can't Google them, right? So that is why this kind of forum, like the TED, is so good because it gives us intimacy. We can talk about ourselves really. And though this is about breaking down the barriers, a journey towards self-growth and fulfillment, which seemed kind of generic, but I'm going to peg it on my own story. So that by the end of this, I hope it's not just going to be my story or your story, it's going to be our stories. So I'll start with the barriers. Growing up in Delhi in the early 60s, there were many barriers. The first one was physical. As a young girl, you can't go out. Street lamp ke pehle, you have to be home. It was our times. You can't talk to strangers. Fair enough. But then there were social barriers. You can't be seen with boys. You can't go to socials. You can't go to afternoon socials also, by the way. And you can't wear a skirt which is shorter than this. Did I follow rules? Absolutely not. As all self-respecting young adolescent, I rebelled. There was a time when I wore Dimple Kapadia spotted little shirt like this with my bare stomach and short skirt. My parents were horrified. But I did it. But a nagging thing, I noticed that, my peers and sisters and cousins, they were not doing it. I was doing it. A rebel without a cause. And then I hit upon the third barrier. My internal barrier. I used to feel very small, desolate. I had a strange lack of self-esteem. I used to feel very small, but I didn't know that. This is despite the fact that I was doing well in school. I was Miss Martyr. I was Miss JMC runner-up. I won a lot of trophies in elocution and debates. And yet I felt small, and I could never understand why. And these kind of feelings I carried with me after my National School of Drama when I reached Mumbai, my fourth barrier. It was very tough. It was almost the worst. My personal life was in shambles. I was going through a very tough time. I was new in Mumbai. There was no work. And early 80s, there was no work, so there was no food, there was no home, there was no personal life. It was all a mess. And we were struggling. I remember a lot of people in my peer group, of course, Nina Gupta and I, we used to be serving food at Prithvi because we used to get a plate of food in the evenings. And I recall a time my mother said that, you had told me, Ma, there is only money for a rickshaw or a toothpaste. What should I do? So they were tough times. But something magical happened 2 years after I came to Mumbai. I hit jackpot, you may say. Some of you may remember the show called Karamchand. It did very well. I played a character called Kitty, which became iconic. So I was absolutely, in 2 years' time, I was all over the place, like with so much organic fame, I can't tell you. I was in color spreads, I was in, magazine covers, because that was digital time, so, the people, the journalists would come home, and it was like something else. But did I enjoy the fame? Did I respect the fame? No, I didn't. I felt like an imposter. I felt, "Ye kya ho raha hai mere saath? I don't deserve this. Why are they loving me so much?" I used to feel very traumatized, so I went to a therapist also. But funnily, I managed to fool him. And he said, no, you're good. So I said, no, I'm having these issues. And he tried to make me answer a lot of questions, but I wouldn't give him enough for him to diagnose me. So he said, take medicines. I said, no, I'm good. And that's the time I met something which really changed my mind. And this is what I want to share with you, young people. I met the seminal work of Carl Jung. Many of you may know in psychology. Carl Jung, pronounced J-U-N-G, spelt. Well, Carl Jung was a Swiss psychoanalyst and a psychotherapist. He did amazing work in the human consciousness. And he talked about the shadows. The shadow self is the self which we hide. We don't want it to see the light of day. It could be childhood trauma. It could be abuse. It could be many things which as we grow up, we suppress. And so that's the work I started looking at. And then there was another aspect to it. That aspect was, which I resonated with personally, was in our DNA, he said, and this is pure science. He said that there is an ancestral, some kind of problem in your maternal or paternal ancestry which stays in your DNA, which makes you feel depressed or sorry or unhappy without knowing it. So you may be very, very normal, but you have a nagging, low-grade kind of anxiety. So what does that mean? It means it's in our ancestry. So you have to delete a lot of data from, and that's a science and how you do it. So I spent hours and notebooks after notebooks doing a lot of work on myself. I used to write and look and, really try to make myself feel okay in this fame and in this strange life I was leading in Mumbai, where I did not really respect myself. And then, I did try to do stuff, I tried to do a little bit of Reiki, crystal healing, whatever was happening, but still I wasn't feeling good. There were always voices in my head, my parental voices, बेचारे वो थे भी नहीं, but I could hear their voices. I could hear my friends, my people who were working with. There were these voices in my head which kept telling me different things. I was torn in many, many ways. In many directions I was torn. In fact, I was like one huge silent scream. My body was screaming, but I was not listening to my body. I was a young person and full of pain. And then another magical thing happened, and that was the cotton wool, the humble cotton wool. I must tell you this story. So as I got along, I was doing work. I formed a non-profit in Orcha, Madhya Pradesh, where I was teaching marginalized children and working with women. And actually at the end of it, in hindsight, I was ticking off boxes. मैं ये भी कर रही हूँ, मैं ये भी कर रही हूँ. Some kind of something I had ordered on myself, something I'd worn on myself. So what happened those days, of course, even still today, there's no flight to my village. I have to take a train. So I used to take this train. Those days it was 18 hours, which would take me from Mumbai to Jhansi. And I would take the first class compartment, and there were a coupe of 4 seats. So once the lights are off and it's dimmed and everybody's huddled into their blankets, the snoring would start. Somebody would snore from here, then upar wale berth, then this. So horrible sounds of people snoring in different cadences. It wasn't funny, it wasn't musical, it was quite deadly, all kinds of sounds. And I would try to sleep because next day I had to go for work. I was working 14 hours, amassing money, going to the non-profit, doing work, coming back the next night. It was like really, really frenzied, and I wanted to sleep. And ye aawazein ho rahi thi, and I can't poke someone and say, hello, excuse me, you're snoring. So one day I was, my kit I was opening, I saw cotton wool. So I said, I'll stuff it in my ears. And true enough, the sounds faded. The sounds of the snoring faded. But another magical thing happened. When the sounds of the snoring were fading and I was drifting off to sleep, I could hear my own breath. I could hear the throbbing of my heart. I could hear the sounds of the blood swishing in my body, some things I'd never heard before, because I wasn't tuned to myself, my body. And that made me realize one very important thing. What you tune out, you tune in. So by tuning out, I was tuning in. And I thought to myself, the planet is 13.8 billion years old. Why does it care that one Sushmita Mukherjee humanoid is getting disturbed by somebody snoring in a train to Jhansi? And I thought, fair enough. It's not the planet's problem, it's mine. And I have this power in my hand to change it. And it was changed by that humble cotton wool. So I realized that when you are in trouble or when you're not feeling easy with your life, art comes to your aid. And I was outside, I was watching all the teachers, the notice board. Art is something which we humans have, which animals don't have. Animals and us have a lot of things in common, but they don't have art. And so that art saved me. And that helped me, publish my books and, do write, act, and do the several things that I was doing at that time. That is what helped me by tuning out. Which brings me to the third part of how I'm moving towards fulfillment. It's a work in progress, of course. So what was full and what did I fill? I'm not sure. But one thing in my journey, I do feel that fame is very cheap. It's very inexpensive. There are too many people who are famous. If you tie your shoelace well, you're famous in today's day. Authenticity, uniqueness is very expensive. Fame is like, your clothes, 3 months, street fashion, 3 months it's out. Authenticity is those pieces you put in your wardrobe, which are classic pieces which define you. That is your authenticity. And I went for that slowly. Because in our times, there was this movie heroes and the cricketers. They were very famous. But in your time, there is an entity called the internet personality. Now, this internet personality, we don't know what it does. It's so big and glitzy and glamorous from Hollywood to Bollywood to every place that we all yearn for it. There is a magnetic pull, as if we are hypnotized into believing that is real. And of course, some segments of society want us to be hypnotized, no doubt. But this is where I thought that I didn't want to do it. Even as a child, I shared with you, I rebelled. There was a time in my media, the curly hairs were very fashionable, so everybody would do tongs. Then straight hair, so everybody would iron. Now it's golden flecked streaks, everybody does. So I'm not judging anyone. It's just that I just didn't want to be that, that, which is what I want to share with you all. We should not be factory products. Everybody looks the same. Cut, tuck, 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 tuck. We just have to know our authentic self. So before I finish, I'll quickly tell you a little story. We were talking about Banj. It's a book of short stories I published recently, and there is a story called The Affair. Though it's a very layered story, I'll tell you quickly in a few lines. It's a story of a middle-aged woman. She's married to a very rich man. He's in the MNC, earns crores of money. She's got children. She's very happy. And somewhere in midlife, her old friend tells her, why aren't you going back to dancing? You used to be so good. She's, no, don't say that. I'm fine in my life. But something moves inside her, and she goes back to her dance class. And to her horror, she finds she can't do her dance steps. The kids are all young, and they call her auntie. And they laugh at her because she comes in a big car. But then slowly she gets back to her dancing, and she makes friends with the children, with the young people, and the teachers. And there's one particular person called Zakir. He's got hair like Zakir Hussain Tabchi. She calls him Zaki, and they go out and they have a good time. But her family is not happy with this. The daughter says, Mom, what do you dress so quirky? I mean, what kind of... And the husband also says, she's very strange. She's taking so much care of herself. She talks to somebody all over the phone. So I think maybe there's some affair going on. So he follows her one day. And she gets off the car. She gets into a rickshaw and she goes into a suburb. One shabby building she goes up. And he follows her up and there is a red door. Only her name is written. And there's sound of music and, something happening inside. He's mad with jealousy. Bhagta, and he bangs the door and he says, open, open. And he opens the door. Who's there? There's nobody. He says, where is he? Where is the guy you are having an affair with? Where is the guy? And she's astonished. She said, what? Affair? No, I'm not having an affair. Oh, I get it. Oh, Mr. Husband, I'm having an affair with myself. Don't you see? This is the first time I've met me. So, I'm continuing to have an affair with myself, but on the path of marrying myself. Strange? I'll tell you why. Because I'm now happily remarried. I have 2 grown-up children. My son is getting married next month. And I was Googling, in our Sanatan Dharma, there is this Firas and Saptapadi we do, the 7 steps. So I was doing that. I was Googling that. And it said, love the other, honor the other, be loyal to the other, serve the other. And I thought to myself, how come I'm not loyal to myself? How come I'm not serving myself? The vow I'm going to give the other, why don't I give the vows to myself? Because what use is a broken person to anybody and to any society? So I thought that if these are the three things I would like to leave you with. One, I really passionately urge you young people to look into the internet for shadow work. It's going to help your careers and your life in a big way. The second is the cotton wool. What you tune out, you tune in. And the third, before you get married, have an affair with yourself. Because we are in a delicious age, it's a digital age. But it's also a little dangerous age, and why I say this is because it's the WWW, World Wide Web. And why does a spider make a web? To catch insects. So we are not insects. We are humans with great potential. And so we must follow being human. I hope this makes sense. Thank you for your patience in listening to me. Thank you.